Ever stop and wonder what data points are really sitting on the desks of investors like Warren Buffett or Jamie Dimon right now?
Yeah, I mean, not just the headlines, right? But the granular stuff they use to actually navigate the market.
Exactly. That's where the real insight is, isn't it? Looking, beyond the surface noise.
Understand the underlying forces at play.
Absolutely. And that's really our mission today. We're doing a deep dive into a specific market analysis from June 10th, 2025.
Right, so this isn't just general theory.
No, it's a look at an actual economic indicators review, pulling together key data points from, well, right now.
And our goal here is kind of act as your guides,
Hmm.
extract the most critical nuggets from this specific source material.
Give you that essential shortcut to being genuinely well informed about what this analysis says is driving the market.
Right now, yeah.
Okay, so this review, it honed in on several specific things. The CME FedWatch tool,
Hmm.
consumer confidence data, the job cuts tracker, bond yields, also Phillips curve analysis, and the U6 unemployment rate. Quite a list.
And the power of this specific compilation, which the source really highlighted, is how they collectively paint a comprehensive picture.
Right. It's not just one piece.
No. You get insights into where monetary policy might be headed, how consumers are feeling, the real health of the labor market, including the slack, and of course, interest rate trajectories.
Seeing them all together gives you that much more robust overview for making informed decisions, much more than just looking at one in isolation.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's unpack what this analysis specifically said, starting with sentiment. The source mentioned the latest consumer confidence data. What was the key takeaway?
Well, the review noted a slight dip, actually, particularly concerning future expectations.
Oh, interesting. Not current conditions.
Current sentiment held up, kind of resilient, but that forward-looking part, it showed consumers are becoming, a bit more cautious about the next 6 months or so.
Hmm. So that suggests potential headwinds for spending down the line. That's a crucial signal.
It really is. A bit of a mixed signal on sentiment overall.
Okay, let's connect that to the labor market then. This analysis looked at it from two angles: the job cuts tracker and that U6 unemployment rate.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here, according to the source, is the contrast it drew.
Okay.
The job cuts tracker, which focuses on those announced corporate layoffs, it showed a continued elevated level, particularly in certain sectors. So suggesting, targeted areas of softening.
Right, specific industries maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then you look at the broader U6 rate, which, remember, includes discouraged workers, people working part-time because they can't find full-time work.
The underemployment measure, basically.
Right. The analysis pointed out this rate stayed, stubbornly above the main headline unemployment figure. It specifically mentioned it was near X% note, placeholder for actual percentage if available, otherwise keep general.
Okay.
And that signals, persistent underutilization, hidden slack in the workforce that the headline number just misses.
So, based on this review's look at the data, targeted weakness, but also broader underlying slack, how does that labor picture tie into inflation expectations and policy theory, like the Phillips curve analysis they mentioned?
Yeah, that's a really important question the source tackled. Traditionally, right, the Phillips curve suggests low unemployment leads to higher inflation.
The Cossack trade-off.
But this analysis highlighted how that relationship, in recent data, it seems less clear-cut.
Hmm. How so?
It pointed to recent wage growth figures that aren't really triggering the expected proportional jump in overall inflation. Or you see inflation easing without a huge spike in the main jobless rate.
Right.
So the source suggested this might indicate the trade-off itself is shifting, maybe giving policymakers a bit more room before labor tightness automatically fuels price pressures.
Or maybe it signals something more structural changing in the economy.
Exactly. It raises that possibility.
That's a critical nuance for thinking about policy. Which brings us perfectly to the CME FedWatch tool and bond yields, kind of the market's temperature check on interest rates. What did the Juneteenth analysis say there?
Well, the review specifically noted that even with those signs of labor market slack and maybe a shifting Phillips curve,
Yeah.
the CME FedWatch tool still priced in a pretty significant probability. The data reviewed showed it around 65% for at least one more 25 basis point rate hike by the Fed in the coming months.
Wow. Okay. So the market's still bracing.
Seems like it. And at the same time, the analysis highlighted Treasury yields. It noted the two-year yield stayed, notably higher than the 10-year yield. They mentioned specific figures, Y% versus Z% note, placeholder again.
The inverted yield curve or flat curve? Still there.
Still there. And that, coupled with the FedWatch data, It just reinforces the market's expectation that tight monetary policy is going to persist, even if some economic data points look like they might be cooling off.
Okay, so let's recap. Putting all these pieces together, according to this review, we've got cautious consumers, a mixed labor market picture with some underlying slack, maybe a shifting inflation dynamic,
Uh,
and yet a market still clearly bracing for tight monetary policy reflected in FedWatch and those bond yields. The source really emphasized seeing this combined view is essential.
Absolutely. It's the interplay between these indicators that really informs decision making. This kind of, multifaceted analysis bringing together sentiment, labor depth, theory, market expectations. That's precisely what seasoned investors use to understand the complex landscape they're navigating as of June 10th, 2025.
And seeing how these different pieces fit together according to this specific review, that's what gives you that deeper understanding. So considering this complex picture, everything from consumer jitters and those labor market nuances to shifting economic models and stubborn rate expectations, what does this whole compilation of data suggest you should perhaps be paying closest attention to in the days ahead?